Hello guys, so I'm going to show you my new custom firmware for the Retrostone 2. So I've been working on it for like a week now. Actually yes, a week, because I only got my new Retrostone like a week ago. So previously I got like a prototype version of it, but the prototype was actually using a different screen. So if I needed to test the refresh rate or things like that, well, I needed to have the actual screen itself. And unfortunately, they never actually sent it to me. So well, thanks to the guy who actually sent me one of these Retrostone 2, because yes, he was crazy enough to buy a second one. So let me power it on. So it will take 15 seconds to actually get to G menu 2x. So we are in the menu. So let me turn down the brightness a bit. And we're going to set it to the minimum because my camera doesn't like this screen at all. There we go, now it wants to focus on the screen. So, what do you get with my new custom firmware on the Retrostone 2? So, you get the menu itself. So, you do get support for the OPK container. I said container because if you try to put any other OPKs for the RG350, for example, or even my previous custom firmware for my first Retrostone, it won't work, so don't try. In fact, they won't even show up in G menu. So you will need to use specifically made OPKs for the Retrostone 2. So let me show you a few that I have ported. So let's try the games first. One game that I like to port first to test is DL 1.2 is Gamba and Natsuki-san. So yeah, initially my port had a tearing in this game, but I quickly fixed this, and now the game runs smoothly. And this also shows a different feature of my custom firmware. It will upscale any content for, so for example, this game is 240p, and the IPU, well, or the display engine as they call it, will upscale it to 480p, sorry. So yeah, and you will still get VSync, triple buffering, and a hardware surface. So, well, in this case, it doesn't use a hardware surface, it actually uses a shadow surface. So you won't get that benefit in this game, but you do get VSync, triple buffering, and so on. So pretty cool. So let me exit the game. Let's select. So this one. Hey Boys, or yes, Hey Boys. So this is a Tetris game that I have recently ported to several devices, and I also converted this game from C++ to C because it has a few weird issues when it was still C++. But yeah, I mean, this is a fun Tetris clone actually. Oops. And it does run fine. This game, well, it supports the lower resolution 240p and the higher resolution 480p. This port uses the higher resolution because yes, this is a 480p screen, unlike the predecessor, which was using a 240p screen. Well, a 240p composite screen, so it was even worse. And internally, it was processing it was processing the display as 240i. So yeah, it's really awful. But this screen is actually quite good. The only issue I really have with this one is the processor or the SoC it uses. I mean, it's an Allwinner A20. It's decent compared to something like the RG350, but it's not that much more powerful, unfortunately. Let me play the first level, and let me turn on the framerate counter. This game is running at 240p, and it's not quite smooth because in later sections of the game it will drop down to even 10 FPS. But at least on the first few levels it does run quite okay. Now if I say try to force it to a lower resolution, it will actually run even better, but I didn't want to do that. Well, I could have done that, but yeah. So now let me show you the emulators that I have brought to this handheld, well, my custom firmware. So let's try with something that, well, it actually worked fine on my first Retrostone custom firmware, but now let me show it to you on this device with a better screen actually. You can only skip the intro after. Yeah, there we go. Time trial. There we go. As you can see, it does run fine. There's no tearing. There are no drops. Well, there were a few drops before, but they are quite rare. It's usually for loading stuff in the background. And you can trigger the menu with the power button, because unlike the previous one, which was using a hardware switch, so if you actually press the switch and you turn it off like that, it will actually turn off. But this is a software button, so you can actually use it for stuff like that. This is actually pretty much like the RG350, so if you press the power button, it will also bring up the menu. So pretty cool. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to make sure to have at least source code compatibility with RG350 stuff. So of course you still have to recompile it for ARM, but other than that, it's not a lot of work. Well, it's not a lot of work if you are a developer, that is. Let me show you a 32xe. And as you can see, it also runs fine on this A20 SoC. Now, to be fair, this is not one of the most CPU intensive games. It's actually Afterburner. But yeah, I mean, if it runs virtual racing at 60 FPS, it will also handle Afterburner quite decently. And as always, you can press the power button. Well, actually in this one it's select. but you can change it to the power button. So let me show you how to do just that. Emulator control, and you go to enter menu and you press the power button, and there we go. Now you can save your settings globally, and if you press the power button, it will actually trigger the menu. So the game runs fine. Well, 32X runs fine, and so does Sega CD, which you will need a BIOS for, and you can also run Mega Drive games on Pico Drive. But what about Master System? Because Pico Drive, it doesn't emulate the Master System very well. So this is my fork of SMS plus GX, and this one uses the hardware IPU, display engine, just like my other ports that I've showed you before. So PCSX, Rearm, Pico Drive, and so on, they all use the hardware scaler. So as you can see, it does run fine, and if you press the power button again, it will bring up the menu, and you can increase the sound volume. So pretty cool. Game Gear games also run fine. And this will also run ColecoVision games if you have a BIOS. And it will also run SG-1000 games. Oh, and if you try to play a PAL Master System game, it will actually set the refresh rate accordingly to 50 Hz with no tearing. So that's pretty cool. I took like a day or two to make this feature work, but I think it was worth it in the end. So let me show you the PC Engine Emulator. Now this port, it uses the ARM Dynarect, the compatible core, to be specific. And I mean, yeah, it's no surprise that it runs the PC engine, pretty well. Well, most of the games, that is. There are quite a few problematic games that won't run correctly, like or there are a few games that have like alt behavior, like Bravo Man. But other than that, they run pretty cool. Oops. Oh, and yeah, this temp port, it actually uses the IPU as well. And some of the games, like this one, I've made sure that it will crop some of the black pixels. Now, it can't crop everything, but yeah, it does cut off a significant portion that are like not used by the game. So pretty cool feature. So let me show you next my Virtual Boy emulator. Well, actually it's based upon MedNafen, but it's quite cut down and pretty optimized. So this one is fully programmed in C, so there's no dependency on the STL library, and it does use the hardware scaler as well. And since the Virtual Boy uses a refresh rate of 50 Hz, the screen will also be adjusted to 50 Hz as well. So it does run fine, and the Virtual Boy does have a second D-pad, so you can choose as you wish to map them to the face buttons if you want, because I think there are 2 games that use the second D-pad. I think it's Zero Box and another Japanese game. So yeah, these emulators that I've showed you, like, they all run fine. So now let me show you the ones that don't run at 60 FPS. So PCFX. So as you can already hear, the audio can keep up with the frame rate. In particular, it struggles with decoding videos for PCFX games. Well, a lot of PCFX games are basically videos. And it also does support the mouse, but I think like only a handful of games do support it. But you can use the mouse in the BIOS if you want. Oh yeah, and this one does require the BIOS, so yeah, the GBA emulator doesn't require BIOS, but it doesn't run smoothly, unfortunately. Right now it's set to 2, which is the right setting for this machine. Because if you set it to auto, my code isn't perfect, so it will try to set it higher than it can actually. If you set it to 0, which is no frame skipping, well, there's not much going on right now, so it can keep up. But if there's like anything on screen, like for example displaying sprites or background or whatever, it will have a stroke. Why can't I escape? Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I mean, as you can hear, the audio can't quite keep up, even though it does seem to run okay on the video. So yeah, I mean, if I set it to 2, it will keep up quite nicely. So this was GBA. And I think I've showed you pretty much everything, really. Oh yeah, let me show you free acceleration, because right now 3D acceleration, it doesn't work properly actually. So let me show you KMS Cube, and as you can see, it doesn't run very well. So it will only run like once. And if you try to run it the second time, it will just exit right away, and I have no idea why it does that. But if I reboot and I try to run it, like just right now, it's K, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There we go. Spinning cube. And nothing else. And it can also run SDL2 games, but I don't have like any on hand that doesn't also use 3D acceleration. So yeah, you can exit it with start. Oh yeah, and let me show you video playback. So let's try a 480p video, which is the resolution of this screen. So this was a short video. Now let me show you 720p instead. As you can see, it already skips frames, but it can still keep up with the audio. Now let's try a 1080p video, and as you can see, it already struggles. So yeah, on this handheld, it's pretty much 480p or nothing, but that's fine, you know, because there is actually a hardware video decoder, but I couldn't actually get it to work, so quite unfortunate. Oh yeah, and you may wonder what these are for. These are for testing the refresh rate mechanism. So if you actually choose the 120 Hz version of it, it will actually change the refresh rate to 120 Hz. But personally, I wasn't able to see a difference. But what I was able to see was the fact that there was no tearing while doing so. So effectively, you can run 120 Hz stuff and have no screen tearing, which is pretty cool. Now there is also a 30 Hertz mode for maybe a few. Oh yeah, and if you saw that screen rolling, it does that when there is a change in refresh rate. And as you can see, it does lock on to the refresh rate, which is 30 Hertz, and there's also 50 Hertz, which is used by a few emulators. The Virtual Boy Emulator is one. The Master System is also one that uses it for PAL game. And there's the 60 Hertz, which is the default, but I won't show it to you. So yeah, I mean, if you put my custom firmware on this device, that's pretty much all you will get on it right now. So if you were hoping to play PSP games or Dreamcast games, unfortunately, that will have to wait. At least it will have to wait until next Mesa3D release, because there are quite a few bugs with the open source GPU driver. So the only 3D stuff I was able to run was the spinning cube that you saw earlier and SDL2 stuff, and that's it. I've tried a few games and it won't work. Never will, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for GLS1 or even GLS2. I've also tried PPSSPP, and it just crashes when it tries to create an OpenGL content. I also tried the proprietary driver, but it won't even let me display the spinning cube. In fact, it won't even let me play SDL2 games. So I went back to the open source driver, and yeah, I mean, there were quite a few issues. Well, I could actually make the binary blob work on this device, but it would be too much trouble on this one, so it's not worth it, unfortunately. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you and bye. Oh no, never mind. Let me show you one thing before I say goodbye. So this is the first Retrostone, the very first one, which used the all-winner H3, and yeah, I mean, it does look quite bad, but if you the PCFX emulator, it does actually run full speed, huh? And you can already notice a difference in terms of speed. Now it does struggle, but that's a kernel issue, unfortunately. Well, yeah, and it's kernel and the software that's used on it. I mean, unfortunately, the screen makes it that much harder because it's not supported by the mainline kernel. So you are stuck basically with the old kernel, which is a shame because, well, to be fair, this should have never happened, but whatever. So yeah, I mean there's no power button, so you have to, well, I had to actually map them to one of the buttons behind, and there we go. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it, and really it's not that much different from my other custom firmware. So but this one it does use, well, it uses older stuff on it. And okay, let me power it on again. It will take 15 seconds. Yeah, there was also the flash player that I made available on it, but it ran pretty slow even on this one, so I didn't bother porting it to the Retrostone 2. And as you can see, you can already see the difference between the two. So, and yeah, I mean it's not that much different. I mean, there wasn't a Virtual Boy emulator at the time appropriate for this handheld, so it's not available on this one, but there's not a lot of differences other than that. And I'm pretty sure that Super Nintendo emulation will run okay on this one as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So for as far as 3D acceleration will go, I hope that the Lima team will work on fixing that, because there's not much I can do really. So yeah.